The world stands at a dangerous crossroads, teetering on the edge of a crisis that could shape the course of history for generations to come. Tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States are higher than ever before, with each nation watching the other's moves with suspicion and unease. Many experts fear that a single spark, an attack, a miscalculation, or even a misunderstanding, could ignite a conflict with consequences that would ripple across the globe. This is not just another regional feud, it's a confrontation that could reshape the world as we know it, affecting lives far beyond the borders of the Middle East. Why does this crisis matter so much? And why is the world watching so closely? The Middle East is a vital energy hub, supplying much of the world's oil and gas. Its stability is crucial for the global economy. It's home to key shipping routes like the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal, through which millions of barrels of oil and countless goods pass every day, linking continents and economies. If war breaks out here, oil prices could skyrocket overnight. World markets might crash, sending shockwaves through every sector, from energy to food to technology. Millions of innocent people could be drawn into chaos, forced to flee their homes, and entire societies could be upended by violence and instability. The stakes are even higher because of the players involved, each with their own ambitions, fears, and powerful militaries. Iran is a regional power with growing military strength and influence, determined to assert itself on the world stage. Israel is an advanced, nuclear-capable state, fiercely protective of its security and willing to act decisively if threatened. The United States, the world's most powerful military force, has deep interests and alliances in the region, making its involvement almost inevitable if conflict erupts. If these nations clash, the shockwaves will be felt everywhere, from the world's financial capitals to the streets of distant cities, affecting ordinary people everywhere. This essay explores how the rivalry began, why it is getting worse, and what may follow if diplomacy fails to prevent disaster. By the end, you'll understand why this crisis could change the world, and why what happens next matters to us all. To understand today's crisis, we must look back to 1979. That year, Iran's Islamic Revolution overthrew the old monarchy. The new government, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, rejected Western influence. Iran quickly became an enemy of the United States and Israel. Before the revolution, Iran and the US were allies. American companies invested heavily in Iran. The Shah of Iran even recognized Israel. But all this changed when the revolutionaries took power. They saw America as the great Satan and Israel as its puppet. The revolution shook the Middle East. Iran's leaders called for the destruction of Israel and opposed US power in the region. The US responded by isolating Iran. New alliances formed and mistrust grew deeper each year. This history still shapes the conflict today. Old wounds remain open, fueling suspicion and fear on all sides. Since the pivotal events of 1979, when the Iranian Revolution dramatically shifted the balance of power in the Middle East, the relationship between the United States and Iran has been defined by decades of deep distrust and hostility. Over the years, both nations have exchanged not only harsh words, but also threats, sanctions, and accusations, fueling a cycle of suspicion that has proven difficult to break. The United States repeatedly accuses Iran of supporting terrorism, funding militant groups, and working to destabilize the region. American officials often point to attacks and unrest across the Middle East as evidence of Iran's influence. Iran, on the other hand, insists it is merely defending itself from foreign aggression and interference. Iranian leaders argue that their actions are a response to decades of sanctions, threats, and military presence by foreign powers near their borders. For Israel, Iran is seen as its most dangerous and unpredictable enemy, a nation whose ambitions threaten its very existence. Iranian leaders frequently deliver fiery speeches, vowing to resist Israel and sometimes even threatening to destroy it, further escalating tensions in the region. In response, Israel has made it clear that it will do whatever it takes to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, even if that means using military force. Beneath the surface, a shadowy conflict has unfolded, with secret wars raging in the form of cyber attacks, covert operations, and targeted assassinations, leaving a trail of suspicion and fear. Despite occasional attempts at diplomacy, most negotiations have ended in disappointment, with both sides walking away more distrustful than before. The Iran nuclear deal, signed in 2015 after years of tense talks, briefly offered a glimmer of hope for a new chapter. The agreement placed strict limits on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for lifting crippling economic sanctions, raising hopes for peace and stability. But in 2018, the United States abruptly withdrew from the deal, reigniting tensions and sparking protests both in Iran and around the world. In response, Iran resumed parts of its nuclear work, and whatever trust had been built quickly collapsed, plunging the relationship back into uncertainty. Now, with military drills and preparations on all sides, the threat of open conflict looms larger than ever as each nation braces for the possibility of war. Distrust and fear continue to drive decisions at the highest levels, making compromise seem almost impossible and leaving the world anxiously watching for what comes next. Much of the current crisis in the Middle East centers on Iran's controversial nuclear program, which has become a focal point for international tension and debate. Western countries, especially the United States and its European allies, fear that Iran's true intention is to secretly develop nuclear weapons, despite its official statements to the contrary. Iran, on the other hand, insists that its nuclear program is entirely peaceful, claiming it is focused on generating energy and advancing medical research for its people. But Iran's actions, such as enriching uranium to higher levels and restricting access for international inspectors, have raised serious alarms among the global community, fueling suspicions about its intentions. Israel, feeling directly threatened, has made it clear that it will never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb, viewing it as an existential danger. To back up its warnings, Israel has already launched airstrikes on Iranian targets in Syria and has been linked to acts of sabotage at Iranian nuclear sites, demonstrating its willingness to act. The United States has also threatened military action, keeping its forces on alert in the region and signaling that it is prepared to intervene if diplomacy fails. Each act of aggression, whether it's a covert operation or a public threat, pushes the region closer to the brink of war, increasing the risk of a wider conflict. Another major concern is the so-called breakout time, the estimated period Iran would need to produce enough weapons-grade uranium for a single nuclear bomb if it decided to pursue one. This breakout time is crucial as it determines how quickly Iran could shift from a civilian nuclear program to a military one, should it make that choice. Some experts warn that this window is shrinking, making it harder for the world to respond in time if Iran decides to build a bomb. For both Israel and the United States, this is seen as an unacceptable risk, one that could have devastating consequences for regional and global security. If Iran were to obtain nuclear weapons, it could set off a chain reaction, prompting other countries in the Middle East to seek their own nuclear arsenals in response. Such a scenario could trigger a dangerous nuclear arms race in the Middle East, making the region even more volatile and increasing the risk of nuclear conflict. The conflict is not just about three countries. Iran has powerful allies, including groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and militias in Iraq and Yemen. These groups can strike Israel or U.S. forces across the region. The U.S. and Israel also have strong military partnerships. The U.S. has troops and bases in the Middle East, and it sells advanced weapons to Israel and Arab allies. If war breaks out, it could quickly involve many countries. Even small clashes could, spiral out of control. A missile fired by a militia could trigger Israeli airstrikes. U.S. forces might be attacked in Iraq or Syria. Each side has red lines, and crossing them could lead to a wider war. This web of alliances makes the situation more dangerous. The risk of a regional war is very real. If war breaks out, it will be brutal and high-tech. Iran, Israel, and the United States all have advanced missiles. Cities could be hit within minutes. Civilian casualties would be high, and infrastructure could be destroyed. Cyber warfare is another major threat. Both Iran and Israel have launched cyber attacks on each other's power grids and nuclear sites. The United States is a cyber superpower. A digital war could shut down banks, airports, and hospitals far beyond the Middle East. Chemical and biological weapons are also a risk, though less likely. Even limited use could cause panic and mass casualties. Refugees would flee war zones, creating a humanitarian crisis. Modern war is unpredictable. It could spread quickly, affecting countries that aren't even involved in the fighting. One of the world's most important waterways sits at the heart of this crisis, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow channel links the Persian Gulf to the open sea. About 1/5 of all global oil passes through it every day. If war erupts, Iran could try to block the strait. It has threatened to do so before. Such a move would send oil prices soaring. Tankers could be attacked, and naval battles might break out among world powers. The United States Navy patrols these waters to keep them open. But even a small incident could trigger a major conflict. Insurance rates for shipping would shoot up. Energy markets would panic. The world's economy depends on this fragile passage. Any disruption would hurt everyone, not just the countries at war. A war between Iran, Israel, and the United States would not stay limited to the Middle East. The world's energy markets would be rocked by uncertainty. Gasoline prices could double or triple in days. Major powers like China and Russia could get involved. China buys much of its oil from Iran. Russia has its own interests in the region. They might supply weapons or use the chaos to expand their influence. Global trade would suffer. Companies might delay investments. Stock markets could tumble. Supply chains, already fragile, could break. Everyday people around the world would feel the impact in higher prices and economic instability. The political order could change too. Alliances might shift as countries look for new security guarantees. The Iran-Israel-United States conflict is a crisis with no easy answers. The risks are huge. The costs of war would be felt worldwide, from the price of oil to the safety of people everywhere. Can diplomacy pull us back from the edge? Leaders continue to talk, but mistrust runs deep. Or is this the beginning of a new era, one where major powers compete openly and global rules break down? The world watches and waits. Will reason win out, or are we about to witness a conflict that could change the world forever?